The suburbs. The stomping grounds of the modern nuclear family. Sure, the suburbs contain affordable living and a dream, but the world of the suburbs is one of a lengthy history and dire consequences for American living. So join me as we cover the history of the suburbs. Flag on the play, horrible intro, offense, number 7, 5-yard penalty. The term suburbs originates from the Latin word suburbium, meaning near to a city. In the ancient Roman Empire, that usually encompassed practically most of Italy, as the Aurelian walls made it abundantly clear what was Rome the city and what was backwater country. Sure, there was the occasional suburb in other large centers like Constantinople or Carthage, but for the most part, the Roman one was the only one that mattered. That was until a bunch of barbarians who couldn't take the banter sacked Rome, not once, not twice, but thrice in the span of just 70 years, bringing an end to the technological wonderland of Rome and the suburban lifestyle. After the fall of Rome, Europe entered into a dark age, which is just a white people term for the medieval ages. With all the Germanic and Visigothic kingdoms feudalizing, there was once again an emphasis on the divide between the urban sprawl and the farmland that peasants could live and die on. But those who wanted in on the urban life and didn't have the privilege of riches or royal favor began to settle outside the walls, forming small villages overshadowed by the city fortress. When you go to an old city like Paris, Vienna, or London, and even some early Renaissance cities like San Juan, you can see the clear divide between the rich urban center protected with the walls and the commoner accommodations outside. When the Renaissance began and Western Europe got the habit of sailing to the New World and conquering everything in sight, this setup changed. While some important cities like the Spaniard San Juan and even the British Boston had walls, for the most part new settlements were often a sprawl of small cabins, with no true divide between towns and villages other than an arbitrary border. It was this blueprint that most cities followed, with rural sprawl only being interrupted with a handful of forts here and there. This continued into the 18th and 19th centuries, with the great part of America being either large cities or small villages. This all changed with the onset of the Industrial Revolution. With the boom in technology and manufacturing came the horseless chariot, a magical device that propelled itself forward. I think it's also called like a car or something. With the automobile came the ability to commute from farther communities to the urban centers. The only issue was that no one could really afford those, as during the Great Depression, many couldn't even get jobs, let alone cars to get to those jobs. Although the Allied victory in World War II boosted the economy, there wasn't exactly many new houses built, and veterans hadn't exactly enjoyed the most lucrative pay during the war. It seemed like the woes of the Great Depression would never truly end. Enter the Federal Housing Administration and the Veterans Administration. With the VA, veterans returning from war could focus more resources towards building a new life in post-war America. But the FHA was the one ready to hit haymakers. The FHA introduced the now common policy of long-term, low-interest mortgages, which made the idea of buying a home much more feasible, sometimes even more so than renting an apartment. This coincided with a boom in the construction fields, as many began to use mass production tactics used in the fortune of many war-related buildings to make a fortune. With the market primed and ready, the percentage of homeownership boomed from 40% to 60%. Many of the regulations like lot size meant urban centers were too densely packed for further investment, leaving suburbia to reap all the benefits. But of course, where you see population growth, someone sees new customers. With the explosion of the suburbs in the 1950s came the relocation of many popular department stores that were traditionally centered in urban areas. Think of the shopping mall. It was a tightly packed group of large-name stores and other smaller mom-and-pop shops since its conception in 1958. It served as the suburban equivalent of a downtown shopping center. In one easy expansion, companies could reach out to a whole new demographic of suburban middle-class citizens with often even more disposable income. This led to the suburbs coming into direct conflict with their urban counterparts, as many times companies had to choose between a downtown store or a mall depot. Suburban and urban municipalities often had to compete for the same money, for the same people, and for the same investments, and often suburbia won. But soon, the cracks began to show. The truth was that the allure of the suburbs was falling. The standard nuclear family slowly died out as the baby boom ended and people began to have less kids. The predominantly white neighborhoods now had to deal with an influx in arrivals from African Americans and Hispanics. The architecture that helped the suburbs grow was soon working to its detriment, as public transportation that focused on suburban to urban routes became outdated in the face of suburb-to-suburb commutes. The safety of the suburbs seemed to rob one of their freedom to pursue their interests. Ironically, the suburbs that connected you to the city seemed to disconnect you from the world. After the Great Recession crashed the housing market, more and more people flooded back into the cities. To this day, housing prices have gone up substantially, and buying a house is more akin to shooting yourself in the leg.
and yet still the suburbs remain, clinging to life like the ancient beings that were raised in them.
Since ancient Rome, the suburbs have historically been an important part of a nation's infrastructure. But it wasn't until the post-war economic boom that America experienced in the 1950s that the plans for a modern suburb truly came into fruition. Balancing urban luxury with rural simplicity, the nation's families flocked to it, creating a world in of itself. The suburbs have fundamentally altered our landscape, and whether for good or bad, you can't deny that they're here to stay.